Welcome to our Q4, quarter four, workplace mental health webinar. I am Ligaya Lange, and I am the Director of Corporate Wellness for NAMI GLAC, and I manage the Stigma-Free Workplace Initiative, which we will talk a little bit about more later. So today we're just going to go over some general stats and trends, how to have mental health conversations in the workplace. We're going to talk about workplace resilience, and then we're going to do a spotlight on Gen Z, which is the generation born between 1997 and 2012. Some interesting tidbits about them, how to manage them, and how they can thrive if you are part of Gen Z in the workplace. So before we begin, I'm a fan of just centering yourself, right? This is NAMI, and we are in a mental health webinar. So I'm going to just do a quick 2-minute breathing exercise with everyone. And I'm going to switch my screen here. So just follow my prompts if you can. So before we begin, let's just take a moment to ground ourselves. Sit comfortably, feet flat on the floor, shoulders relaxed. I'll do it along with you as much as I can. We're going to do a simple breathing exercise together that you can do anywhere, at work if you need to, any time of the day. It's known as box breathing, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, but we're going to do it together right now. So inhale gently through your nose for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. And then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 4. Hold again for a count of 4. And exhale slowly again for a count of 4. We're going to do that one more time. So inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 4. And then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 4. Now take one more deep breath in and let it go. So we're meeting each other wherever we are, and hopefully now your body feels a little more calm and relaxed. I don't usually do that, but I think I'm going to start doing these breathing exercises in the beginning because I think we all need to be centered as we talk about these important topics. So just so you know a little bit more about me, I spent 15 years in corporate working for 3 major studios and a top 5 consulting firm. And then I had anxiety pretty much my whole life since I was 18. I was a competitive runner in high school and college, and so it got really bad in college. But it was acute. It would be on and off. And then when I had my daughter 5 years ago during the pandemic, I had a severe case of postpartum anxiety and OCD, and that's what brought me to change my career from corporate to mental health. And now here I am at NAMI. It's been 2 years, 2.5 years, and I'm very happy, and I'm glad I did that. So just wanted to give you guys a little history. I started by implementing what was then the Cal Hope Warm Line, which has now become the amazing Connect with Hope Warm Line that we have open Monday through Saturday. So please, look on our website for that number and those hours. So quickly before we begin, I just want to emphasize that this is a safe space to share and feel comfortable amongst your colleagues, NAMI staff, and the presenter. Obviously, we're not all colleagues here, so just amongst your peers, NAMI staff and the presenter, myself. I have had a question about whether there will be Q&A, so there will be a 10 to 15-minute Q&A, hopefully, at the end, and I do try to get to everyone's questions. So if you have a burning question that you need to ask, go ahead and ask it. Otherwise, I ask that you would please hold them till the end of the presentation for the Q&A. Okay, looks like we're... Okay, so for today's agenda, we're going to go through current stats and trends for mental health in the workplace, nationwide and in Los Angeles.
I thought you were staying longer.
Oops, Debbie, would you mind muting?
Come stay every week. We'll try. You do fine.
Thank you. Managers and colleagues, when and how to have mental health conversations at work, building resilience at work, Gen Z in the workplace. That's our spotlight today. We have a few slides to just go over Gen Z because they are one of the demographics that currently struggle in the workplace. We're going to go over mental health stigma, what it is, and what you can do, especially with our Stigma-Free Workplace initiative, to help to eliminate the stigma in your workplace and create a more mentally healthy and open workplace with psychological safety where your employees can thrive. So we will go through that, and then we will have our Q&A. All right, so with that, let's get into it. So workplace mental health, our current stats and trends. In reality, as most of you may know, 1 in 5 people do suffer from a mental health illness annually. So it is not something to be ashamed of. It's actually quite normal, 20% of the population. According to OSHA, nearly 1 in 3 US workers say their job makes them stressed always or often. And 50% of US employees reported burnout in 2024, with Gen Z being especially vulnerable, which we will talk about later. 36% of employees have difficulty accessing their mental health benefits, with only 1 in 3 using them. According to a recent Gallup survey, the approximate EAP utilization rate across 7 global regions is only 2 to 3%. So that's really important for employers who have an EAP benefit to check your utilization rates and ensure that your employees know how to actually access that benefit. More than half, 52% of employed Americans believe their employer is not doing enough to support their mental health. And the bottom line, the cost to companies, which is very important to acknowledge, according to Gallup, low morale costs American businesses up to $550 billion annually due to lost productivity from absenteeism, illness, and other factors in their work environment. Mentally distressed workers are 3.5 times more likely to miss work, costing employers approximately $340 a day for a full-time employee and $170 a day for a part-time employee. A recent study of 5,000 employees revealed, this is a significant statistic, 93% of employees say wellness support is just as important as salary. I will be sending this deck out to anyone that registered after the presentation, and these are hyperlinks. You can go ahead and see where these sources are coming from. And the companies that do invest in mental health wellness programs that go above and beyond their mental health benefits, such as insurance and EAP, see a return on investment of $4 for every dollar spent, and that's a 400% ROI. So that is really important for those of you who lead or manage companies. This is something that should be invested in and will pay you back for sure. The bottom line here is the company leadership cannot afford to ignore mental health. So I'm not going to read every word of every slide, but I wanted to read those statistics because I think they're very significant and they're the backbone of the presentation. So with that, we will move on. So what contributes to workplace stress? So we have our internal factors, whether there's psychological safety in the workplace. And what psychological safety refers to is just that employees feel safe to voice concerns, talk openly about subjects like mental health or their workload or whatever is stressing them out. And it's something that they can go to their employer with or talk with peers with without the fear of ramifications or stigma or anything that could negatively affect them and their employment. So psychological safety and whether it's there, whether or not, is definitely a factor. Company culture, of course, is a factor. Whether your environment is high stress, high pressure, if there's low morale, untrained managers is a very big one. In our Stigma-Free program, we do mental health training for specifically for managers, because so many people are put in manager roles where they're running a team of people. They may or may not be suited to that. And so we need to make sure as leaders and company management that when we put somebody in a management position that they are trained on mental health so they can better support their team. And of course, in this job market, uncertainty and change, particularly in Los Angeles, in the entertainment industry with AI coming, we all know how job insecurity is such an issue. And better change management is needed in many of these companies when these changes are happening. External factors, obviously political, societal unrest. I don't need to remind everyone of what we've been through locally with the fires and the incoming administration and the different cuts that we may or may not be experiencing. Right now, the government is shut down. So I guess I did just remind you, but all of these things cause stress. Financial challenges, of course. If you're a caregiver or a parent, the youth mental health crisis is going to affect you. You're going to take that to work. And caregiving responsibilities in general. All of us have people that we are taking care of, whether we're parents or not. And then managing your own health and your own well-being and getting that self-care in is so important, but it's much easier said than done. I want to read this one quote about Los Angeles. So the mental health landscape in Los Angeles is shaped by a complex interplay of the COVID-19 pandemic, homelessness, crime and public safety issues, climate anxiety, and economic factors. These events highlight the need for increased access to culturally competent mental health services and resources, particularly for vulnerable populations and young people. So this presentation is really geared toward explaining where we are with mental health in the workplace currently and highlighting different demographics that are struggling in particular and how to have conversations, but also to encourage anyone that is in the position of leadership in a company, or even if you just work for your company and you want to advocate for mental health, that going above and beyond what is the normal mental health offering for a company, which is maybe mental health insurance that is not equal to your physical health insurance. Of course, mental health parity is an issue, and EAP is not really enough at this point because we really are going through a mental health crisis, as these statistics show. And so employers need to kind of go above and beyond that to offer the mental health and well-being that their employees are needing right now. So invisible mental health. So most mental health concerns are not visible, and people struggle in silence, especially if there isn't that psychological safety and there is that stigma that we talked about. And especially if they have thoughts of suicide or self-harm, there's a lot of shame and guilt that goes along with that. So in our NAMI study, stigma, fear of retaliation, and lack of communication were cited as reasons why employees do not talk about their mental health at work. More than 2/3 of employees say their managers influence their mental health, a figure that surpasses the impact of doctors and therapists. And what I didn't put here, but you can link later when you get the presentation and see, is that I think it's 30-something% more than their actual partners or spouses. So that's significant. We spend so much time at work, so much time reporting to whoever we report to, our managers. And again, some managers may or may not be best suited to manage a team of people, and yet they have such an impact on their employees. So I guess since most of you are not on camera, I will just say, have you ever wanted to ask a coworker about how they're feeling or held back from sharing about yourself? So I will definitely say that I have. And I'm sure many people have. Yeah, you can put your hand up. I see some hands going up there. That's definitely something that most of us have experienced. I'm sure we wouldn't probably be on this webinar. So, important thing to discuss is how to talk about mental health at work. We have the do's and the do nots. And this is specifically from our NAMI guide for managers, which you can access on the bottom of this slide. Oops, sorry. Okay, so the do's. So when you're approaching somebody that you, and this is sort of in a peer situation, there's also manager to employee and different situations, but the most common is just peer to peer. So we're going to go over that in this presentation. So you want to let the person know that you're there to listen. You lead with empathy and compassion. Be prepared with resources because it's one thing to say, hey, I've noticed that you've been quiet, or I'm wondering if you're experiencing any type of hardship, and then not having any resources to offer them. It's fine to just, show that you care and be an ear. It's great when you have resources that you can immediately suggest to them. So tell the person they're not alone in their struggle. Like we said, 1 in 5 people struggle with a mental health illness each year. So they're likely not alone. And if you have a lived experience or something that you can share about your own struggles or your own self, that always helps a lot. So those are the do's. You just want to be open. You want to let them know you're here to listen, that you've noticed something, that you're checking in with them, and that, whatever they tell you, just accept it, hear it, have some resources for them. Make sure to emphasize they're not alone in their struggle, and share about yourself if you're comfortable. Now, the don'ts. So don't minimize or dismiss what they say. That's a given. I would think to most people who do lead with empathy, we're not going to just dismiss what people say. So definitely don't do that. Just listen and accept it. Don't suggest a diagnosis, solutions, or treatments. Most of us are not doctors, unless you are, but you do want to refer them to resources to get a diagnosis and encourage them to get treatment and support if they need it. Obviously, you don't go alone. If you're concerned about safety, you can bring someone with you. You can let your manager know that you're concerned. But it's always better to just try to do a one-on-one private conversation check-in. So hopefully, safety isn't a concern. But if it is, you definitely want to have an additional person with you. And don't be afraid to bring up suicide. This is something that is really a difficult conversation to have. It's very nuanced. It's sort of taboo still in our society, but it is something that all you have to do is acknowledge in the conversation and say, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. And that's where you go in with your resources, reminding them that they're not alone, and possibly suggesting that if they're having ideation or they're actually planning something or they're really feeling down about this particular, topic, that they don't hesitate to call 988, the crisis line. That crisis line, people normally associate with a 5150 hold at a hospital. That's more likely if you call 911. If you call 988, the respondents are from DD Hirsch. They're well trained on talking to somebody who has suicidal proclivity or ideation, and they de-escalate 90% of the calls. And they will come out personally and assess the situation if need be. But they try to keep you out of the 5150 emergency room could be traumatizing situation. They're definitely better trained at dealing with a mental health crisis than the police. So I highly suggest if there is worry over suicide to encourage that person and maybe call with them so they don't feel like they're alone. Again, for more information on how to have these conversations, access our NAMI guide for managers. And that link is right there available for you. So I wanted to give an example of a workplace mental health conversation peer to peer. This is a relatively simple case, but just an example. So Taylor would come in, and you can decide which one's Taylor and which one's Sam here. But Taylor would come in and say, hey, Sam, you've seemed a bit down lately. Is everything okay? And Sam, if he's more forthright, or she, would say, honestly, not really. I've been feeling burned out and kind of stuck. It's hard to shake it. Taylor, I appreciate you sharing that, and I understand. Sometimes I've found it hard to balance everything and stay motivated. You don't have to go through it alone, though. A lot of people are feeling the same way right now. So that's showing the empathy, showing the personal experience, relating to Sam, and then also reminding Sam that they're not alone. So Sam, yeah, I just don't know where to start. So Taylor would then say, maybe start small, take a real break, talk with someone you trust. Also, NAMI has free support groups and warm lines if you ever just need to talk to someone who gets it. They're not therapy, but they're really understanding. You can look online at namiglac.org for all their resources. Missing an L there. There's the presentation of resources, right? So you're going in and you have some resources prepared. NAMI is always a great one to suggest to this person who's struggling. Sam says, that sounds helpful. Thanks for the tip. And thank you for checking in. People really appreciate when others check in on them, actually. You're afraid to do it, but it actually can make such a difference in their day and in their life. So please don't be afraid to do it. That's why we want to emphasize how to have these conversations. Taylor, anytime, let's grab lunch soon. Okay. So this is like also, many people are remote or hybrid, but this is offering to actually have a relationship with this person and continue to be a supportive ear for him or her. And that's just very important. So this is a good script or a good way to start if you are thinking of having a conversation with a coworker. So very important to, helping to build a mentally healthy work environment is workplace resilience. So resilience refers to an individual's ability to adapt to changes, overcome challenges, while maintaining productivity and a positive mindset. It involves coping with stress, recovering from setbacks, and maintaining a focus on organizational goals despite adversity. Leaders need to foster a resilient workplace, especially in these times. How do they do that? Create psychological safety, as I've spoken about, foster trust, openness, and empathy. And it comes from the top. So if you are a manager, you're capable of helping your work environment become more resilient. If you're a peer, just by being more open and more empathetic, you're making your workplace a more resilient workplace. And especially if you're a C-suite or a leader, you following these steps, you are really going to make a difference. So strengthen connections, build teamwork and a sense of belonging. Encourage healthy coping, model balance in mindfulness and self-care. Sometimes leaders like to send out those one quote a day, maybe send out, a reminder about breathing and grounding and mindfulness and how important it is to do self-care once a week, and an example of what you do to do these things for yourself. Just an idea. It's just a way for you to really take part and walk the walk with your employees and build resilience. You want to recognize growth in whatever capacity it's appearing in for your company. So you want to celebrate effort, not just the wins, but all the effort that goes into many of the projects that your employees are working on, just learning and progress. So it doesn't always have to be a major win or the end of, meeting a goal or a deadline. Just the path, the journey along the way requires so much work and effort and possibly stress for your employees. You want to find ways to recognize the little things along the way, as well as the big things. So that's another way to build workplace resilience. If you want to read about two real world examples of organizational resilience, Lego and Microsoft are great examples. There's a link here. It's very long, so I'm not going to read it to you, but please click on it when I send the presentation out, read through it. It's very interesting how they implemented, how they worked on workplace resilience and the steps they continually take to foster it. Okay, now we're going to get into our spotlight, which is Gen Z. So Gen Z are workers that were born between the years of 1997 and 2012. And I have this little Don Draper for anyone who's ever watched Mad Men here on the side, 1960, the ideal worker, the corporate American worker, looking very snazzy in his suit, all self-assured. And now we're down to 2025 and we have many Gen Z workers that are working in the workplace, and they're very, very different from the traditional corporate American worker. So top issues Gen Z employees face. So Gen Z rates stigma and lack of openness as top workplace stressors, ranking them alongside job security and work-life balance concerns. So stigma to a Gen Z worker and that lack of openness and resilience is very important to them when they're looking for a job and when they're looking at a company and when they're working at a company in order for them to keep up their motivation and their own resilience. Um, they rank this stigma and lack of openness as top workplace stressors, excuse me. So that's just as important for them when they're thinking about a job, as job security and work-life balance. So among Gen Z, there is high stress, anxiety, and burnout rates. It's important to remember a lot of these Gen Zers went through COVID-19. So COVID-19 related anxiety and depression is prevalent, largely stemming from profound social isolation and uncertainty about the future. Um, they struggle with work-life balance and constant connectivity. So they're constantly connected to their email, their social media, their phone, whatever it is. They feel like they need to be constantly connected. Whereas Gen X, millennials, we have more experience with putting our phone down. We don't necessarily need to be connected at all times, although a lot of us are. I know I struggle. So they are definitely affected by this more than any other generation. I don't even want to know how Alpha, the next generation, is going to deal with this, but we will see. And I may put this in bold: the desire for authenticity, purpose, and psychological safety. Gen Z, a lot of Gen Z, they need to feel purposeful and intentional with their work. They need to feel like what they're doing is making a difference, or that it's in line with what their morals and values and goals and objectives are. They're not the type to just go work for a company for the paycheck, and job security only, as we've spoken about. They want to work for companies that have an impact, that make a difference in our world, and especially the ones that align with their own values. So that is very, very important to them. So how can managers support Gen Z? So normalizing mental health conversations, again, leading with openness and empathy, coming from the top is so important. It gives them that idea that the stigma and the psychological safety will be there, and the stigma will be reduced in that work environment. And it's something that they need on a regular basis. Provide flexibility, respect boundaries, and promote balance. Leverage hybrid versus remote. So it's an astounding statistic. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but when you look at hybrid versus remote preferences, the percentage is much, much higher for Gen Z preferring hybrid versus remote when it comes to millennials and Gen X, who prefer remote much more. And Gen Z really, I think, craving some of that connection and that human connection, and feeling like they're part of a team. They really leverage hybrid work, and managers should leverage that when they're doing any type of mentorship opportunities. So when you're meeting with your team and you have a lot of Gen Zers, just be aware that they prefer more in person than the average worker may at this point. And just, maybe do a lunch or some type of in-person get-together gathering, maybe once a month or as often as you can, to help with the Gen Z employees, to keep them engaged and keep them feeling like they're part of something that is important to everybody in the company. Offer purpose and feedback. Connect daily tasks to meaningful goals. So making Gen Z feel like they are doing something meaningful. Make sure that whatever projects you give them, they understand that it is connected to the ultimate goal that they align with, of the company, and that everything that they're doing as much as possible. We all have to do admin work. We all have to do data entry and things that are boring and don't really connect to the greater good. But as much as possible, have the major projects they're working on clearly connected to the greater goal and the objectives of the company at large, and make them feel like what they're doing is intentional and purposeful. invest in growth. So important. That mentorship, skill building, and development paths. That's how you retain the Gen Z employees, is to not only make them feel like they're making an impact and that they're able to connect with their coworkers, but that they're also being seen and heard and invested in. Mentorship opportunities can be anything like leadership development or just meeting with your team as a manager or an executive and having them be part of the conversation. Skill building, giving them opportunities to hone their skills, classes, things they can take at either the local community college or UCLA Extension. Any of the extension classes they can take online through the universities, just anything that is in showing that you're investing in their growth and their development paths. Promote inclusion and belonging is the last one. Just again, making them feel seen and heard. And this is not just Gen Z nowadays, but it is particularly important to Gen Z. But as we have moved to more of a remote work experience and are now starting to go back to the office, just promoting that team feeling and that inclusion and belonging is so important. I can say from my personal experience, I worked at 20th Century Fox for almost 15 years before we merged with Disney. And most of my closest friends today came from my experience at Fox, because they did work hard to do a lot of activities to bring people together. So things like that are, we became friends naturally, organically. So things like that, and having those opportunities for Gen Z in particular, because at that time I was probably like in my 20s, looking for my groups of people. That's just so important when you're managing a group like Gen Z. So just this statistic, or this quote on the bottom, with Gen Z projected to account for about 30% of the US workforce by 2030, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, businesses risk losing the generation set to shape the future of work if they don't act now. So again, that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Leaders can't afford to ignore mental health. This is something that's really important, particularly for Gen Z. And in the appendix of the presentation I'm going to distribute, there are more facts and figures about Gen Z, but we obviously need to keep track of time. So you'll have that when you receive this deck. So what if you are Gen Z? How do you thrive as a Gen Z employee? You have to have a mindset for growth and well-being. So these are the top. And again, there's going to be more in the appendix of the deck when you receive this. But prioritize self-care. So do rest, move, and set healthy limits. Boundaries are so important. People often, especially in the more traditional corporate America, years before COVID, people were not prioritizing self-care. It just wasn't something that C-suite executives and leaders were shouting from the rooftops. I mean, it was something that they would say they were promoting, but not in practice, really. So as Gen Z, if you are Gen Z, you know how important it is for you to feel like you're taking care of yourself and your mental health. So do the things you need to do. Rest, move, set healthy limits, eat a good diet, make sure you're sleeping, do as much as you possibly can, do those breathing exercises, grounding, mindfulness, look for things like meditations and whatnot, go to those yoga classes, go to the cycle classes, whatever it is that makes you feel healthy and grounded, make time for that. When you're at work, seek connection. Build supportive peer and mentor relationships. You may have to go out of your way a little bit if this is not encouraged from the top yet, and they're not encouraging group activities yet and teamwork, but you may have to send an email to someone that you noticed in a meeting and you're like, I think that I would love to talk more with that person. Try to set up a virtual lunch, or maybe meet them in person. Do that with executives. They love to mentor younger eager workers. So don't be afraid to reach out and advocate for yourself and say, I'm new and I would really like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. Do you have a moment in the next few weeks where we could connect? There's nothing wrong with that. So that's how you build connection, and hopefully your company will be helping you with that. Try to choose a company that does also prioritize that. Communicate your needs. Again, advocate for yourself. Be open about workload and feedback preferences. Don't be afraid to tell your manager, that you are overwhelmed if you're overwhelmed, what things you like to do and are good at, what you prefer to work on, what you don't. You may not get what you want, but I always say advocate for yourself in any situation. So it's no different when it comes to your workplace. You recognize your strengths. It's why you were hired. So be open about, what you want to work on if you're getting overloaded and how you prefer to receive feedback. Is it in person? Is it in email? What helps you the most? And, you're going to find out whether your manager wants to listen to you or not. And that's going to weigh in on whether you stay at that company. But it's important that you always advocate for yourself. Embrace learning. So view challenges as opportunities for growth. This is hard to do, but it is very important. It's resilience. So embrace learning. You have to look at challenges as like, this is something that may look like a challenge to me, an insurmountable mountain, but it's actually something that I can break down and get done, possibly with the help of others, and view it as an opportunity for growth. And if it doesn't, the outcome is not necessarily what you would have wanted ideally. It's still something that you've done, that you've added to your repertoire of experiences, and something that you have learned from, and you can continue to build on in the future. So try to be optimistic about challenges. Use the resources available for you for mental health. So if your company offers an EAP, which is usually in the form of therapy, 10 free therapy sessions or something like that, use it. There's nothing wrong with that. And the utilization is really low. And trust me, the companies are paying a lot for that. So they want you to use it. So learn how to act, get in touch with HR, learn what they have to offer you. Some companies offer free subscriptions to the Calm app or whatever it may be. Use what's available to you. Definitely use NAMI. Okay, we have 7 chapters around LA area. We cover 70% of LA County, NAMI GLAC. Then there's NAMI West Side and there's NAMI Downtown LA, or NAMI Urban. So there is a NAMI support group online or in person for you. Family support groups, peer-to-peer support groups, connections. So whatever case, however you are struggling or not struggling, you can definitely look at namiglac.org and see our calendar of events for all of the resources we have. And again, if you're feeling very overwhelmed to the point of, where you may or may not be contemplating suicide, please use 988. I would say use the Connect with Hope warm line first. It's great. I'm going to have information on that and slides coming up. But if you're feeling really, really down and overwhelmed, don't be afraid to call 988. They're very, very professionally trained and they de-escalate 90% of calls. Again, don't be scared. And just remember, your mental health is a strength, not a weakness. Thriving means being authentic, balanced, and supported. So Gen Z, always seeking to be authentic, being yourself, being your best self. Work needs to be an extension of that for you. So again, you should be proud of that and see your mental health as a strength and not a weakness. And physical health, mental health is just as important as physical health. Can't say that enough. Okay. So that is our summary on Gen Z. Again, I will have more information on Gen Z on the back of the appendix once you receive this. So let's just talk about stigma, which has been mentioned several times in the presentation. Why is it important? So stigma, as many of you know, mental health stigma refers to the negative attitudes, beliefs, and stereotypes that society holds about individuals who experience mental health conditions. So a big part of NAMI is our cause to end the stigma. We're not going to be able to end it, most likely, but we can definitely work to eliminate it, especially in the workplace. So why it's important is because it prevents people from speaking up about their mental health struggles to their managers or colleagues. It prevents employees from getting the treatment they need when they need it. And it may result in obviously lost productivity at work. Lost productivity is often a hidden but significant cost for companies. So that's just another thing for managers and leaders to keep in mind. So what is the solve? The solve is to commit to eliminate workplace stigma around mental health, or at least commit to lessening it. Foster conversations and employee engagement on the topic of mental health. mental health conversations matter in the workplace. This is something employees want. Again, 93% of employees that were surveyed in that one stat that I mentioned earlier said that mental health and well-being at the workplace is just as important as their salary. That is something that is really important for managers and leaders to take into consideration when they think about how they are talking about or not talking about mental health in the workplace. So what specifically can you do? And this is where we are going to get into talking about the NAMI GLAC Stigma-Free Corporate Partnership Program that we have. And this is the program that I oversee. It is a close and collaborative partnership between your company and NAMI GLAC. So we partner with different industries. It could be law, it could be medical, it could be community health, it could be any industry. And we partner closely. So Stigma Free is actually a NAMI national program, but it has been recently rolled out to the affiliates. NAMI GLAC started doing this in January of 2025. It's been a slow burn for sure. Just learning as myself being the director of the program, just learning how to establish relationships and talk to people about the need for this at their company. But especially lately, it's becoming something with a lot of momentum. So what we do are tiered programs. It can be anywhere between 3 and 12 months of programming. We do request in exchange for the programming a tax-deductible donation to NAMI GLAC, and that goes to support our no-cost free mental health resources for the community. So you better your workplace mental health at a nominal cost to your company. Your donation will support, again, our cost-free community resources. And don't forget the bottom line that there is a 400% ROI on implementing mental health and wellness programs in the workplace. Our programming is customized to your industry and your employees. We actually do a survey during the kickoff to find out what topics are most important to your employees. And so along with the standard presentations we give and standard activities we may do, we ensure we cover the 3 most important topics to you and your employees. This will also build trust company-wide and improve overall performance. It fosters a healthy, productive, and supportive work environment. And you become a certified NAMI GLAC stigma-free company at the end, which just shows that you're a company that cares about mental health for your employees. And it can actually be great for employees coming in to know that this program exists and that you are going above and beyond just offering EAP and mental health benefits. So that was it on the Stigma Free. So I would just encourage everybody to stay in touch. The NAMI GLAC website and calendar is right here at namiglac.org. Our wellness Stigma Free program is on this website, and you can email me directly, or you can email stigmafree@namiglac.org. We have our social media available, and I want to really stress the Connect with Hope warm line, which is just there for any situation you may be going through. We have, I think, 5 to 7 trained peer support specialists at this point who man the warm line. The number is 818-208-1801, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. through 8 p.m., and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we do have Spanish-speaking peer support specialists who are there as well. I can't stress the importance of this warm line and how useful it is enough. It's something I really encourage that you use if you need just someone to hear you out and also provide resources for you. So with that, that is the end of the formal presentation. There is an appendix here. I'll just quickly go through just some information on NAMI GLAC, our 7 local chapters, the difference between NAMI's signature programming and stigma-free programming. Sometimes people are wondering, why would I do a stigma-free partnership when you offer so much for free? Stigma-free programming is just extremely different. Not extremely, but it is just very customized and tailored to you and your company. And that is why we run the program based on a survey that's done at the beginning and based on what your real needs are. It's not as standardized as one might think. And we do activities as well as webinars. We don't just preach at you, but we actually try to get you involved in activities and get you more acclimated to getting support and taking advantage of resources when you need them. And the last thing is just if anyone's interested in taking part in Team NAMI 2026, we're recruiting right now for the LA Charity Half Marathon, which is for mental health for all and ending the stigma. So you can contact me if you have any interest in doing that. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning. And with that all being said, what time is it? Okay, we have 12 minutes. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? Okay, see in the chat here. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read through here. Oh, okay. Well, Mary was just helping me on a statistic that I had referred to. Gen Z workers prefer hybrid 71% over remote 25% work. So that is really important. Thank you, Mary. And then Ryan says that's probably because of bad memories from the height of the pandemic, which we spoke about. How much for in person? Ryan, what does that mean exactly? You can feel free to come off you can use your mic if you want. What is it? Can you just explain that question a little bit? Oh, I'm so sorry.
It wasn't letting me. I was trying to figure it out.
Oh, got it. So Mary did. Okay, in person 100% is 6% desired by Gen Z and even lower for Gen X. Okay, so she did. Did she answer your question, Ryan?
Yes, I did.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so Mary Moran is my colleague, works with me on Stigma-Free. So you can reach us both through that Stigma-Free email address or by emailing me directly. Let me see. Does anyone have any other questions about anything that we went through today? And Chris, Mary, do you see any other questions that I missed? I just want to make sure.
This is Debbie Freund. I have a question.
Sure. Hi, Debbie.
How are you? I love this talk.
Oh, thank you. Good.
But, given Gen Z, some of the individuals are very young. You say 1997 to 2012. Well, people who were born in 2012 were only 13. So what can we do for them if they're still in school and not working?
Well, that is actually that's a great question. I would say that, I don't know if I would be best to answer that, but I do know that, I know a few people that are in school that are at that age. And I think that really focusing on the connectivity and not having them be so focused on comparison and social media and, not so connected. And parents actually, stepping in and understanding how important it is that their kids at that age, especially in junior high and high school, who are preparing to go to college possibly or are preparing for a career, that they connect with them a lot, that they speak with them, that whatever school they're going to, that the school is understanding what generation they're part of and what's important to Gen Z. And that's where, I'm looking into where my 5-year-old is going to go to first grade. She's an alpha. But if, what I've noticed in the schools is, especially in some of the charter schools and the private schools where they have the ability to do it, where the student to teacher ratio is lower, they are doing more to ensure that these kids, I guess this Gen Z between the ages of 13 and 18 are being seen and heard, and they are limiting, how much screen time they have and explaining to them that AI is not a real relationship, and that, social media like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook is not something that you should, that shouldn't be your standard in your life. Really trying to hone in on what their personal skill sets are, what they themselves really bring to the table that will eventually be a strength in college and in an eventual career. Really honing in on what means a lot to these kids. What are their goals? What topics? They're very aware. They're much more aware than I was when I was that age, because of how connected they are. They know about politics. They know about the news. They know about the unrest in the world. So not treating them like kids the way we used to, where they're running and playing outside and they're totally oblivious. That's just not the case anymore. So I think parents being much more aware of what their kids are taking in terms of their phones and the media, and schools, to whatever degree you can choose the school that your child goes to. It's a much bigger issue, the public school system and what we just offer our kids and how we treat Gen Z nationally across the board. But the more that the parent is also involved in understanding their child's generation and what they need to feel seen and heard, and how they develop, and what's most important in choosing the school that they go to for junior high and high school, and then how that school treats that generation, especially when it comes to connectivity, and really honing in on each student personally to whatever degree they can, and teaching them to advocate for themselves, and teaching them, maybe not traditional things that have not been taught traditionally, but just, honing in on what their personal skill sets are and what they bring to the table, maybe earlier on than we did before. Because before, we would just send kids off to get a liberal arts degree, which may or may not end up being part of their first job, which may or may not end up being their career, right? So now it's a purpose-driven life for Gen Z. And I think the more we as parents and teachers and educators and mentors recognize that and put that into action, that's what I think we can do for those kids. Sorry for the really long answer. I hope that helped. I'm going to go in order of what I see. Ryan, go ahead.
So, is it possible for NAMI to be directly involved with human resources in order to find solutions to dealing with people living with mental illness, and it's incorporated with the company, like how it's working on the inside?
Yes, that's exactly what we do with the Stigma-Free program. So we usually work with HR or the CEO or the managing partner of the company. It's usually the company leadership that we work with, and we ask a question right off the bat on the employee survey about EAP utilization and how familiar are they with their mental health benefits. We bring that data back to the leadership, and they have to look it in the face and say, oh, nobody's using the EAP. Oh, nobody knows where it is. So to that extent, then we're able to give suggestions. Maybe we need to do an HR drop-in session and teach your employees how to access their mental health benefits and get them used to going to support groups through maybe bringing a NAMI support group to you, which we've done. And so we do get in there with them. That's why it's such a handheld, closely customized partnership that we do with each company. Okay, Graciela Pulido. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I was just going to say to Deborah's question about the youth, NAMI does offer a program called Ending the Silence that they do focus on the youth. They go out to the high schools and they discuss the topic of mental health with the youth. So that's another program that is available.
Hey, can I speak on that for you a minute, Ligaya?
Yeah. I also want to say NAMI on campus, but maybe Rick, maybe you can say something about that too, Rick.
Okay, thank you. And to everybody, apologies. I was a little bit, on another meeting, but real quickly, NAMI on campus is for all high school students. You want to work with your 11th and 12th graders at first, because they're going to be graduating. And then of course, you bring up your freshmen and sophomores, but you start off with a half a dozen to 10 kids if you can. And you bring in pizza or you bring in hamburgers, whatever you like at lunch. And you get, of course, the okay from the principal, and you get the MOUs that are already in place with LAUSD. And the guy has quite a few connections with the other schools that we help you with if you need them. Then you just have a meet and greet with these young people. You get them to realize that they're not alone, and to let them talk a little bit about what's going on in their lives, and the anxiety, the pressure of being an adolescent, and a young person maybe going on to college in a year or so. And then what you do is we have the facilitators, they're certified. We're the ones that will help organize and stay with you throughout. Usually you can meet once a week at the most, at lunch or after school, or once a month, or bi-weekly. You have your choices. At first, it's nice to meet bi-weekly probably, but only if you have the organization and the PSWs, the psychiatric social workers behind you. If they're with you, then you're in the door, and then you're going to be able to work more cohesively with the young people. Now, when you do the NAMI on the lobby, NAMI on campus, you make sure that the teachers and the physical ed teachers, as well as the psychology classes, that they have the flyers. We have these templates, these flyers already made up, and then we get approval through the state. We can have the NAMI GLAC, which Ligaya, myself, and others will walk you through, will get you through approval of the state of California, because they're the ones that oversee the approvals, of course. But then we do what we call our NAMI here at GLAC on campus, NOCs. You can also do the same concept with the colleges and universities. Those are a little easier because they're adults. You don't need parent permit slips. You don't need anything. But we're not ever doing anything off campus. That would be their own volition. We're not liable. We don't have insurance to be taking them on field trips. Although sometimes they want to do that. They may want to go to the beach or to a park and play sports or just hang out or something. But that's in our preview. But those are options as time goes by. You want to get a little board, a little president or a chairperson, vice chair, and secretary, and that's it. You don't need a treasurer because usually there's no funds involved unless they want to be part of our NAMI walks. And that's another thing I could talk about another day. But NAMI walks is where we'd have fundraisers and youth can represent their school, get their own shirts, get their own names of their club, and then they could walk with us and raise funds and raise awareness. That's NAMI on campus. Real quickly, ETS and even silence, we have it right now both in English and Spanish. What we do is we have a 45 to 55, maybe 60 minutes, depending on how many people are there, that would actually be sitting down in person. And we could also do them online, by the way, but we do them on in person. And there, what we would do is we would meet with the parents, perhaps like at a parent center there on campus, or at the school assemblies. And that would be all coordinated by the educational coordinators like myself or other folks that are involved with the ETS program. And what will happen is we would. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I thought I said done speaking. Okay, so real quickly, what happens is ETS is meant for like maybe you can do a classroom at a time, or sometimes like we did it in the Port of Los Angeles, we did assemblies, which was 100 people, 100 student bodies in the auditorium, and we did them back to back to back to back. That means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can actually set these up. And there you would talk about, of course, suicide ideation. You would talk about how do you go forward with young people right now that are coping with the traumas that they have at home or at school. And any assignments will be about 20 slides. It's something you do in pairs. You have a person with a lived experience, usually a young adult or somebody in recuperation that can tell their story a little bit. And then you have a person like myself, a facilitator. I'm an older guy, and we navigate the system for them and tell them what their options are. And Need Science is an excellent program for young people because it lets them know, one, they're not alone, which is our signature motto. Two, that they have their student like the wellness centers on campus, or they have the PSWs, the psychiatric social workers on campus, and they might not even know, but they don't have to share all this information with anybody but just those folks, the professionals. We help them in the referral systems. NAMI helps them get into the right spot in the right place, either through DMH. Of course, they would have to go through if they're under 18, the parents and the teachers and the as I said earlier, the health offices to get all that approvals. We would just let them know that it's okay. We're going to be here with you through the system. They build a little trust, and pretty soon that they realize that we're going to help them in their needs, and that's ETS. We give nice little gifts afterwards, if you will, or little giveaways. We take a Q&A. That's why it might take up to an hour, but usually it's about 45 minutes, and we go through the slides, like I said, and it's a beautiful opportunity for the young people to know that, hey, NAMI's here for you. We have young folks that they can relate to, and like Ligaya and others, like myself, we can definitely help make sure that they get the right connections and the right referrals. So that's a nutshell of those two programs, and I would love, sometime we could even do one, Ligaya, sometime if they want us to, have the slide deck and I have everything, and I could actually do an ETS for you guys with your team over here.
I think Whittier may want that. Ryan is from Whittier College, and he has a question. So if you don't mind, Rick, just because it's 1:03, we're out of time. So let me go to Ryan, and then you and I can talk about how to get that information out to everyone. Okay?
Will do. That sounds good, Ligaya. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ryan, what was your question?
My question is that earlier you said people are really afraid of checking in, but you should, because you never know if you can save a life.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what does NAMI suggest if this pushes someone further away from opening up?
Well, again, before you're about to have that conversation, you do want to go over that. There's that NAMI guide for managers where we go over the do's and don'ts of having that conversation. You can tell how the conversation is going as you're having it. So if you feel like they're not receptive and they don't want to have this conversation with you and they feel like you're infringing on their personal space, just say, you know what, I'm sorry that I bothered you. I just wanted to check in with you. Just know that I'm here if you ever want to talk. And if you're really concerned about that person, you could just end that conversation there and then possibly, bring it up to your manager or human resources so that maybe they can reach out to them, because you don't want to, the goal of the conversation is definitely to make them feel like they're not alone and to give them some resources that they may or may not be aware of, and to just, acknowledge whatever they're going through. So if they're not open to doing that, then, there are different ways of speaking to people. But just in that, we're just trying to frame up a peer-to-peer conversation. If they're not receptive, then, don't force the conversation. It's not something that, you don't want to force it on them, because it may then make them feel even worse that they are appearing this way to other people and they may not want to. So I would just say, I'm sorry that, I bothered you, that I brought this up. I was just concerned, and please let me know if you do want to talk. I'm here for you. And I know I've been through it myself. Always bring in like your own personal experience and say, and it's confidential. I'm not going to obviously spread it to anyone else unless you feel like there's a threat of, suicide or danger to self or others. You don't say that, but then you would want to let the manager know or somebody, but you don't want to push a conversation on someone for sure. So just kind of feel out how the conversation's going. And if you need to end it, you end it with empathy and just let them know you're there for them. And possibly let your manager or HR person know so there is someone watching out for that person. And if anyone from NAMI GLAC wants to add on to that, please go ahead. Okay, seems like that's the consensus. So do look at that guide that is attached to the slide for how to have the conversations. I believe it may address when people are resistant to them. Okay, Mary, you've been waiting. What's your question?
Hi, I just wanted to comment to the question about how to reach out to those who aren't in the workplace yet. My son is 1 year short of having started the Gen Z population, so he's 28. And then I have a 22-year-old, and I am an ETS presenter. And I must say the only time that haven't presented yet, but when I did go The generation that is in high school are so thirsty to talk about this stuff. My one child in the workplace is 25, has only gone to companies that have large conversations. They have mental health wellness days. So I just have experienced just in my own life that the younger generation, they want to talk about this stuff and they are willing to talk about it. In the workplace, maybe not, but in general, they want to learn how to help themselves and others who they love. And so I think that's some great hope to come out of this. Specifically, we just need to get the folks in the workplace who aren't Gen Z to open that conversation so that as these young people go into our work world, they don't get stifled from continuing to openly talk about this very important topic for all of us.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. It's great to have real world insight. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I have to say, Ligaya, thank you, Mary, because that's what it takes is all of us, joining hands together, making sure Gen Z young people are getting the opportunity to not only educate them, but to teach them a little bit about advocating for themselves. So NAMI will help them in that capacity too as we go along. They will be aware and they'll know of the different programs and stuff, but more than that, they'll be able to advocate for other family members and other student body or colleagues of theirs, and we will be there to help them and make sure they get that advocacy part done. So yeah, thank you, Ligaya.
Ryan?
This will be my last question. I've been asking too many already.
No, fine.
What would you say to someone who has not considered mental health aid, has just heard of NAMI's peer support services and resources, and they're still on the fence about whether they want to engage in that for their health?
Well, so peer support, there's several different types of peer support we offer. So we specifically through the Warm Line, that is managed by all peer support specialists. So are you meaning would they want to go to a support group or would they want to utilize the Warm Line? Is that what you're talking about, trying to get them to do?
I was thinking about introducing them directly to group therapy or like
Support.
a structure, not a little bit more than the Warm Line.
Yeah. So you will probably it's not therapy. So our support groups are not, none of us are clinicians. So, or maybe some of us, but it's not therapy, or we don't have psychiatrists or psychologists on staff. So the support groups are really just so that people don't feel alone and they can talk to others having similar experiences. And they follow a very regimented structure when it comes to the agenda for how we run our support groups, to allow everyone to share if they want to, and give people tools for coping and to go home with. So they're not just, coming to the support group and then leaving empty-handed. We really try to give them, support and then something, to go home with afterwards. So if that person has considered it, but they're not quite open to it, you might offer to go to one with them. Start small. We have them in person and online every day of the week for the various chapters, running the support groups, and we have trained facilitators who do it. And we always welcome new people. So they can keep their camera off, they can participate or not participate. It's up to them. So I would suggest going with them to one and choosing one to go with them to, probably a connections or a peer-to-peer, unless they're a family member of somebody with a mental illness, that would be the family support group. But then, make a plan to go with them, and keep camera off and just have them observe how they're run to make them more comfortable and get them more acclimated with that type of group setting. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I may add on to that, that's excellent, Ligaya. You covered all the assets, but we do, we do have our signature peer-to-peer 10 weeks, and we have our connections 10 weeks. And these are for folks that are already, that are not in denial, that are willing and accept their diagnoses, or they're working on it, and they're in some type of recovery, not full recovery, but they're willing to meet with others, like Ligaya said. It's important that you utilize your empathy skills and you just go with them, like she said, to reiterate. the first time for anything is always the toughest. So you open the door online. We have a lot. We have in Spanish and Japanese and other languages too. And you tell them, you're not alone. And then you go in person. That's even better because hopefully the Gen Z will have a support group. I know Ligaya and I are talking about it, and others. That would be our ultimate goal for 2026 is to actually have facilitators and have one of our first, Gen Z support groups for 18 to 25 or something. But again, we're gonna make sure that anybody and everybody that calls in or that needs our navigation of the system, if you will, we have very good resources. We have very good connections all throughout the county, and Ligaya is probably one of the strongest advocates for the young people. So, let people know, refer them to us, and we'll take it from there. Thank you, Ligaya.
Absolutely. We are always, every one of us, no matter what our job is, our role at NAMI GLAC, we know NAMI GLAC like the back of our hands, and we can tell you what resource you may utilize for, or where to go, or who to talk to for whatever you're going through. We will have some suggestion for you. We'll never leave you empty-handed. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out.
If I may add, Mary, tossing in here to Ryan, just for those in the room, I've attended NAMI Connections for myself, and I have family members who attend the NAMI family-to-family support groups, and both me and my family have also taken the classes that Rick was referring to. But just so everyone knows in the room, when anyone goes particularly to a NAMI Connections meeting, which is for people who suffer from some type of mental health condition, you can go in a perfectly great state of mind, or you may go in there in a perfectly good state of mind. I've been in both, and it helps in any way, because just hearing suffering and what people are going through, there's different reasons why people are suffering with whatever they have, but that common language that you can use, and just being there and feeling with everybody, it's just amazing what it does to give one hope, whether or not you're feeling well or not well in that space.
Yes. I agree, Mary. You can go to a support group in tears. I have myself, or you can go, you're having a great day, but you just want to check in, and the facilitator and whoever is there will be happy to see you and to support you however you need. So, all right, the time is now 1:15, which is what we were scheduled to. So does anyone else have any other questions? I will be sending out the link to this recording once we have a chance to just edit it a bit, and I will send out the deck along with that. And so you should be receiving that within the next week. But if you have any specific questions for myself, or particularly, I guess, for me, let me just go to it again. There we go. So I do encourage everybody to go to our website to see all of the different resources we have available, including things like Rick mentioned, Ending the Silence presentations, NAMI on Campus, Ryan for You, and all of our support groups that we offer, the classes, Family to Family, Mental Health Basics, or NAMI Basics, just so many resources. So please do that. Take advantage of the warm line if you need it. Connect with us on social media at NAMI GLAC on Instagram, and NAMI Greater Los Angeles County on Facebook and LinkedIn. And feel free to reach out to me anytime personally or through the StigmaFree email, and look through our corporate wellness program if it is of interest to you. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I will be in touch me and Mary will be in touch within the next week or so to send you these materials, and you can always come back to us with any questions you have. Okay?
Thank you, Ligaya. Thank you, Mary. And thank you to all the folks on the call. God bless you all, and have a great weekend.
Yes. Have a great weekend or week.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, guys.